despite knowing the journey and where it leads. I embrace it. And I welcome every moment of it.
What is spirituality? Now, so for Sufis, for Sufis and for depth psychologists, I believe that spirituality is connecting with the other, right? Connecting with the divine, or the connecting with the bigger personality. And how do we connect with the other person, the bigger personality, or the unconscious, according to Jung, is by lessening the ego energy, right? Our conscious energy, and let the other rise up, if you will, right? And that is the concept of Fanaa in Sufism, which is Fanaa means annihilation, right? So, what is being annihilated? So now, this is actually where Jungian psychology and Sufi concepts or theories kind of clash a little bit. Some actually, criticize Jung for psychologizing basically the reality of religious experiences and all that. I can't go into that right now, but what I'm trying to say is, to end with, is that Jung disagreed with the complete annihilation of the ego, because for him, I believe, or I think, that ego strength is very important for a person's personality. You cannot completely annihilate one's ego or resist being annihilated by the unconscious forces, right, or the divine forces. Divine forces does not mean God himself. It could be like angels or jinns, or it could be like archetypally, complexes that can manifest themselves through the psyche, and they could just kind of take over your ego, and you go to a mental asylum, basically, Or
Perry! Perry! What are you looking at? Perry.
Down! Down!
or become a neurotic person, where, in a sense, where Mansoor al-Hallaj, another Sufi who said, "Ana al-Haq," I am the truth, and well, that's, in a way he was right, but in a way he was wrong, I think. Right?
I think he was put to death for that.
He was, yes, he was put to death for that, right? So he has become a mythic figure in Sufi lore now. But so Jung would say that complete annihilation of the ego would be a detriment to the psyche, because then you would just be psychologically dead, if you will, right? And he himself went through a crisis like that, but he overcame that crisis, and according to historically, Nietzsche, Jung says Nietzsche went through the same thing, and Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, and he was annihilated. He went crazy. So because of these unconscious forces, you see.
You mustn't think I have a closed mind. I have absolutely no objection to your studying telepathy or parapsychology to your heart's content. But I would make the point that our own field is so embattled that it can only be dangerous to stray into any kind of mysticism. Don't you see, we have to stay within the most rigorously scientific confines.
But I can't agree with you. Why should we draw some arbitrary line and rule out whole areas of investigation?
Precisely because the world is full of enemies, looking for any way they can to discredit us. You must...
I knew that was going to happen.
What?
I felt something like that was going to happen. I had a kind of burning in my stomach.
What are you talking about? It's the heating. The wood in the bookcase just cracked, that's all.
No, it's what's known as a catalytic exteriorization phenomenon.
A what?
A catalytic exteriorization phenomenon.
Don't be ridiculous.
My diaphragm started to glow red hot.
Look, I know it's late.
And another thing. It's going to happen again.
What?
In a minute, it's going to happen again.
My dear young friend, this is exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. You must promise...
You see?
That's just... You really can't be serious.
There are so many mysteries. So much further to go.
Please, we can't be too careful. We can't afford to wander into these speculative areas. Telepathy, singing bookcases, fairies at the bottom of the garden. It won't do. It won't do.
The idea of Fanaa in Sufism is, I think, to lower your ego-ness in such a way, or as submit to the will of God in such a way that you don't lose the experience of the God. Who is experiencing? The ego. So if you are completely annihilated, you don't experience it. So that's depth psychology approach. Now the Sufi says, no, you must go through the annihilation process. That's a maqam, is a station in Sufism where you have to go through the annihilation, because if you don't completely go to the annihilation, then you cannot persist the next level. In other words, that's the baqa, right? So in order to be the true being, who you really are in essence, you have to completely unlearn and submit to the will of God, and let the light or the bigger personality in, and to show you and to guide you, and then and then after that you can begin the next process. Now these probably sounds like very theoretical, because not many people have gone through these kinds of stations, but that's a high achieved, or like in Buddhism, you achieved kind of nirvana, and then
detachment from the self.
Exactly, detachment of the self, and then you come back as bodhisattva. Same kind of traditional esoteric wisdom that's coming from every tradition, actually. And depth psychology approaches that and recognizes this, and is in a language that is very modern in a sense, I think, and important for our youth, especially in the West, to understand these concepts.
I think, speaking of it in a practical manner, this concept of interconnectedness, which is at the heart of the mystical traditions. When I see a person suffering who's homeless, it's in my Western education to see that person as other than myself, to see that as someone suffering other than me due to their circumstances. Once I've destroyed this concept of the ego, concept of who I am as an identity figure, I start seeing that person as a reflection of myself as well. And ultimately, we're both of us, all of humanity, all of sentient creatures, if you want to take it to that level, we're nothing but manifestations of something even greater than that. So I think in a practical way, this concept of destruction of the ego, this ego that really, really impairs who we are, and we hope that people can embed more spirituality, more destruction of the ego in their lives, which may sound something that's scary, and it is scary, but it's a journey, it's an inward journey of contemplation that I think is something that we need going forward in our society. Because the rates of materialism are increasing, and the rates of depression and loneliness and suicide are increasing in our society, especially loneliness, which is something that's very, very interesting, because we're more connected with each other through our gadgets and technology than we've ever been before, yet we're so disconnected from humanity.
Yeah.
But once I destroy the ego, you know, I see even the tree as breathing and inhaling, exhaling the same carbon dioxide and oxygen that I do, you know. So for the people watching, we're hoping that, you know, you took a little bit of wisdom from today's episode. Brother Mansoor, if there's people interested in learning more about Jung or Sufism, are there some resources that they can...
But I'm working on Ibn Arabi and Jung's thought, basically comparing the process or the journey of the soul in both of these traditions, and by using the imagery of the mandala. So yeah, that's
the Buddhist symbol of the universe.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well, it's a very universal symbol,
Yes.
and for Jung it was a mandala, which is a squared circle or circle squared, is an alchemical symbol, and well, actually, it's a religious alchemical. It's an image of the psyche. It's a spiritual image of the psyche. It represents and symbolizes the spirit, the archetype of the spirit. So, yeah. So
You'll see Buddhists like spend months or years making that mandala image, and then in 1 second they'll erase the whole thing.
Right. The concept of impermanence.
Impermanence.
Right.
So.
That's yes. I guess look out or Google my name.
Okay, and people who are connected through me through social media,
Sure.
I can put that out as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
Mansoor,
welcome.
for being on today's episode. Nothing much to say. May peace be upon all of you watching. May happiness be in all of your lives. Thank you, Mansoor.